pets are so weird. Cinnamon was very determined to get up here with me. Happy New Year and welcome back to Read Becca. I hope you had a wonderful holiday or time off or whatever you did. I didn't do too much. I did get a lot of reading done, so we'll jump right into it. This video is my weekly catch-up on everything I read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading. So I had a great reading week. I had wrapped up the end of my year with some reads that I thought were going to be great for me. So I really wanted to end on a high note, and I really did. All of these books were amazing. So jumping right in, the first book I finished was All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Toews, and I have mentioned that I'm a huge fan of Toews. I read Women Talking when it came out, literally within 2 days, and basically went and bought her back catalog. So I hadn't gotten back to it, and I've had this sitting on my shelf for a couple of years, and now I'm kicking myself because it was so wonderful. So this one is all about two sisters, and one of them is struggling with severe depression. And I think I'm going to do a standalone review of this one, so I'll kind of keep it light on comments for this. But I would say there was something that I was kind of going back and forth in comments about with Fraser Simons in Bewilderment by Richard Powers. In that book, there's a conscious choice to take the perspective and shift it from a person who's non-neurotypical to someone in their life that is impacted by the person who's non-neurotypical. And I think that is done as well here, where it is from the perspective who is being affected by their sister who is deeply mentally ill and suicidal. And I think in Bewilderment that really muddied the effect, and it would have been more effective if it had been in the non-neurotypical person's perspective. And in this case, I think it's more effective for having that distance. I think if we were in the depressed perspective, it would be a much darker book. And because of that distance, we're able to get such a heart and warmth to this book that we wouldn't have. So I think that was done very well. The other thing that I would note about this is both with Women Talking and this book, there is such a focus and a centering of women. And I think that's true based on all of the synopsis that I've read from her other books, that she really has a focus there. And she just tackles these female relationships so well. So I found that really compelling. And this was just such a wonderful read. I mean, you can see I have tabbed it all up. I love this so much. So I will for sure be doing a standalone review of that one. The other one that I'm kicking myself for not having gotten to previously is The Curse of Chalion by Lois McMaster Bujold. And this is a fantasy novel, but it's not your typical high fantasy. This has a single character perspective from this kind of broken man, and he is returning to Chalion is the place, and he gets pushed into the court, really, I would say. And so this is a fantasy of manners. It's not high action, high magic. It's very much about courtly politics and intrigue. So I think if you enjoy the Varys and Littlefinger parts of Game of Thrones, this would be the book for you. I enjoyed this one so much. It absolutely lived up to all of the expectations that were set, except for the romantic one. So a lot of people had told me it was either fantasy romance or romantic fantasy, both of which kind of require a major romance plot. This does not have a major romance plot at all, in my opinion. It has a romance, very minor subplot. So it's to the point of like them sharing a glance and that being the only interaction within the two for 30 pages, you know? So it's really subtle. Everything in this book is really subtle. So I enjoyed it so much. So this is going to be yet another one very high up on the list for the year. And then that one I will do a standalone review as well. The last one that I read this week, I got in under the wire. I picked this up and realized it was only about 70 pages in this edition, this is the omnibus bind up of all of the Tensorate novellas. So I read the fourth, just the final novella. So it was very short and quick. And this series as a whole has been so interesting and innovative because each of the novellas has different perspectives. It has a completely different writing style and format, and yet it's so consistent in terms of the world building and the quality of characterization. So each time we're following different characters for POV. They're not necessarily directly connected, but they do have connections through this. But the final one is so interesting because it's really, really different from the others in the way of being a casual voice. So it really reads as if we're sitting down with this woman who is a little bit tipsy, and she's telling us the story of her life. And so it's in second person perspective, and I think I really get along with second person. I have yet to come across something that I really didn't like that was in second person, and I felt like it was done really well here. So I can't really talk about the plot because it's so short. In this setting, because it's so different. It's this really Asian inspired setting with this slack craft or tensing magic where they're kind of pulling the threads of the universe. In this final novella, we really saw some unique things that we hadn't seen before, kind of futuristic uses of magic, like magitech type stuff, which really threw me for a loop because I was not totally expecting that from what we had seen. We had kind of seen echoes of that in previous stories, but this one really was so different. So we're getting this story from this woman who's telling us how she went from absolutely nothing as a peasant in a rural part of this world to being very powerful and being in a relationship with a very powerful woman. And so I just love how unique the storytelling here is, and how much, you know, this draws on, again, that really courtly intrigue and politics that is hitting the spot for me. So I enjoyed this one so much. So that's what I finished this week, and it was great. So really fantastic. The one thing that I still have in progress that I have mentioned, and I was really hoping I would finish up this week, but I didn't, was The Dark Forest by Cixin Liu and translated by Joel Martinsen. This is a big chunky book. It's 500 pages, so I had plenty of time to read. My reading has just been very slow this week, but I'm not gonna complain. I finished 3 books, so it's not a real problem. But that means that going into the new year, this is my main focus to finish up. And yet again, this is another really great book. I picked this for the end of the year because I loved the first book in this series. This is big sci-fi. And halfway through, I'm loving this as well. So I think this is going to be a really great way to start off the year. Then as far as stuff that's coming up, I think I'm going to skip doing a January TBR for the month because this coming week is going to be full of TBRs. I'm going to be doing my yearly TBRs for my physical shelf, my owned books, and my library TBR for the year. I'm going to do a 5-star predictions as well. So I've got all of that stuff coming up. So I'm just going to skip the monthly TBR. But in terms of kind of doing that, we know I did not get to The Fall of Babel. And this was a very high priority. Given the amount of time I had to read, I should have been able to get to this, even though it's very chunky. But I didn't. This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year, and I really want to get to it. So this is going to be a priority for January, carrying over from last month. And then the other one is The Hellion's Waltz by Olivia Waite. She writes category romance and historical romance with lesbian characters. Obviously, you can tell, so 2 women. So this one I had gotten for an option for November, and it was supposed to be running out of time, but thanks to my lovely librarians, as I mentioned last week, they did renew this automatically again due to the New Year holiday. So I do actually have time to read it and finish it. This is a very short one, so I do want to read this one. So just finishing out those 2 things is going to be my TBR for January, and that should be very doable. Otherwise, I'm going to be trying to pick up stuff that is coming off of my TBRs, the many TBRs you will be seeing. And then I'm also going to be trying to get out an anticipated releases video, since people seemed generally positive about my doing that. So I'm going to try to do that very early this coming week because there are some very imminent releases I would like to get to. So yeah, so I think that's all it is for books for me this week. In terms of the holiday, I had a really, really nice holiday. It was very lovely. So I kept it very low key and did a lot of reading and relaxing over my week. I did work this week, but it was so quiet. We had almost nothing going on every day, so I should have been able to read a lot more than I did, but I still read a ton and it was great. In terms of the actual holiday, so my mom ended up having a positive test, so she was feeling a little left out that she was not able to go and do things with the family. They're in an area that is having much lower spreading rates than where I am. So I spent a lot of time on the phone with her and helping her feel a little bit distracted. But I think she is out of quarantine either today or tomorrow. So my parents both have had it now, and fortunately her case was very mild and minor and she doesn't seem to be having any problems. She was boosted, so that is really, really great. But I'm glad that it's over, thankfully, and hopefully we'll not have any further worries about these things. But otherwise, I got some very cool gifts. I got some exciting socks. I did get a really, really fancy coffee maker. Like, it's kind of shocking to me how fancy it is. It is one of the ones that does a single cup of coffee, but it uses like whole beans and everything. So it grinds the beans for you and all of that to make the single cup each time. So it's been really nice. I honestly can't tell the difference of it being this super duper fancy coffee maker, but it is really, really good. I had been considering getting like one of the little single Keurigs or something because I have just been using a French press and my electric kettle for a very long time, and I was kind of interested in getting something small to have around. This one is not very small. I mean, it's small for what it is, but it's kind of a large unit. So that forced me to completely clean off my counter because I had piles of tea and coffee there that were in addition to the piles of tea and coffee that I have an entire pantry shelf of. So we cleared that out, reorganized the pantry shelf, and got almost everything put away. So that was at least a good thing to get it for. So that was really, really great. I also have spent way too much time watching dumb TV. So once we got past the holiday, I stopped watching all the Christmas stuff, and I went down a dumb TV hole of watching a lot of McMaster, which is like a tattooing show, and Dave Navarro is the host, and I love him. But it's really, really angsty drama, ridiculous, over the top, like they're at each other's throats all the time. But I love tattoos. I have several tattoos. Once we get to summer, you'll see. If you haven't, I have a half sleeve. So I love seeing the tattoos, and it's terrible when they go really wrong. It's very scary. But yeah, it's been very entertaining for sure. I also discovered there is a great Canadian baking show, and Dan Levy is the host. How does nobody talk about this? Like, that's shocking. So I started watching the first season of that. You can find it online. I doubt it's legitimate, but it's out there. And so that has been a delight. I absolutely love Dan Levy from Schitt's Creek. He's wonderful. So I started watching that. And then this week also is, of course, big end of the year things. If you're in the UK, you know of this. In the US, you may or may not know, but there is a yearly quiz show with, like, it's a comedian panel show in the UK called The Big Fat Quiz of the Year. And they just go over and quiz these comedians about their knowledge of kind of news stories of the year. And it's very funny and fun. So that is out, and I have watched it. It was great fun, but not quite as good because Richard Ayoade and Noel were not on it this year. And I think there has been a little bit of negativity about that, which I'm not going to be too overly negative. I enjoyed the people who were there, but I absolutely adore the two of them. So I was sad they weren't there. Yeah, so if you haven't watched that, I really recommend checking that out. So in terms of recommendations, There's been so much going on in terms of the end of the year stuff, and I'm behind still, but I think the one that I really want to highlight here is Jen the librarian is doing an LGBTQ translated work read-along or reading group, and I'm specifically excited because one of the books I suggested is actually showing up on the list for the first two options. So definitely get over there, check that out, and help select a book for the first read-along. So for sure, check out Jen's channel, and I will link that down below. I think that is it that I have for this week. I did spend a bunch of time this morning, as I had forecasted, putting together my new TBR shelf. So I wound up resetting everything, and I will explain that in the video, but meant completely wiping off the shelf and redoing everything rather than just replacing the books I had read that I've done in recent years. So there's a lot of piles of books all around, but that shelf is at least established. So I just have to film now, and you will have a nice TBR for me. So that's, I think, all I have for today. We've got a big temperature drop, and it's one of those days where it's supposed to be the warmest in the morning and then just get progressively colder today. So we will have like ice and snow tonight, even though it was 60 yesterday, 65. Yeah, so we're finally hitting winter as predicted. We always don't hit winter till January, but this year has been especially weird with ups and downs. So it's finally getting really cold, and actually I'm going to throw in some footage. Gumbo finally hit the bed, which is very exciting. I don't think I explained why that's exciting. So she's semi-feral, and I've been trying really hard to get her to come on the bed, because last year during winter when it got cold finally she did, and that was when we made the biggest strides of her getting comfortable with me and being close to me and stuff. So she, as much as she is okay, she's still not super comfortable with me, and we want to make some more progress with that. So I'm very excited that she did finally hop on the bed today, and we've been working on it really hard this week. I snuck a toy, which you will also see, this laser toy, into the bedroom to get her moving around in there and kind of get her more comfortable moving and following, and get her hunting instinct to get her near the bed, and that apparently totally worked. So now with cold nights coming up, I think she probably will join us in the cuddle pile of the bed. So that's exciting for me. So that's it for me. I hope you had a great holiday. Thank you so much for watching. Finished puzzle. Rue, are you holding down the puzzle? Yeah, so helpful. Good job, buddy. Good job holding it down. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what a weirdo. We got a red dot machine for Christmas. Gumbo, you're missing it. I love your little tail wag, though. So if I haven't mentioned enough, I'm not sponsored by Aldi, but I love Aldi. They always have great seasonal items. So they happened to have a sparkling wine advent calendar. So I got that. So we are going to open it up. This is the countdown to the new year. So woohoo! The Bloody Prosecco. Very exciting. So I've reached a level in Train Valley 2 where this garbage heap in the middle grows and eats your tracks and your trains if they're in there. And you don't have enough money to avoid going through there initially. So no matter what, it's gonna eat it. So things have gotten really, really difficult. As predicted, it ate a chunk of my trains. Rue is helping me clean out the new TBR shelf before I set it. Good job, Rue. Do you fit perfectly in there? Are you my TBR for the year? So I realized last year that Gumbo finally came in the bed when there was a barrier. Like I had a pile of laundry, I think, and cleaned that up and put up a blanket barrier for her so she would feel more comfortable coming up. And so after I remembered that, I put up this blanket barrier to see if she would come because it's supposed to be a little chillier tonight. And Ripley decided the barrier is the coziest bed. So Ripley is now on the barrier. Guys, it is happening! Gumbo is finally on the bed. Yay!